In 1985, he got his medical degree from NUS. 11 years later, 96, he decided to pack his bags and he just left for Yunnan, China. Wife and one-year-old daughter in tow. They spent a total of 15 whole years in China. Today, back home, he's Director of Outreach and Community Engagement with the College of Alice and Peter Tan at NUS. Tan Lai Yong, welcome to Inconvenient Questions. And boy, you're going to have inconvenient questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, my first question. You're 60 years old. How the hell do you end up looking so damn young? You're spoiling the market.
I go to bed by 10 p.m.
And I guess you're a happy man.
I am very blessed and very happy indeed.
You see, that's the whole point. That's the whole secret. Why is it so difficult for the rest of us to understand that secret formula? Being happy, contented, and having peace of mind. Anyway, we'll come to that on a separate occasion. My first question, you spent 15 whole years in Yunnan, in China, running clinics, training farmers in healthcare. You trained more than 500 doctors in Yunnan and in the most impoverished villages, right? Now, what on earth got into you in 1996? You were leading a normal life. What got into you to get you, your wife, and your daughter and turn your lives upside down in 1996?
Oh, it's really a question of what is a normal life. And my wife and I, we came from pretty poor families. And we also have this idea of contentment with is great gain. And so education is a privilege. Being a professional is a privilege. And we thought that while we were younger, to serve God and man, by going to a needy place to exercise our skills and to learn. It's an adventure. So even from medical school days, we planned that we hone our skills. My wife's an accountant. She was teaching at NTU then. And how do we hone our skills such that we can serve a needy community and grow together?
I mean, your wife is the real hero in this story.
Yes.
You're just a sideshow.
Yes.
I mean, to have so much of faith in husband and just go along and be together. I mean, and really you turning your lives upside down. It's amazing, you know. So she's the real hero, not you.
Yes, indeed. When we moved to Sichuan Bana, the reason why we sleep early is because we have no electricity quite often. We had electricity between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. or things like that. And then when we went there, she, using her accounting and statistical skills, calculated how much milk powder, the different months, how much diapers, the different size, that our daughter would need over 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, she missed by 1 pack of diapers.
She's an amazing woman. Yes. And okay, talking about this, right? Tell us, share with us your experience in Yunnan. I mean, the various experiences. Some of the most, some of the toughest experiences you've had.
I think Yunnan and Singapore, the tough experience is when people and events do not shape up the way we plan and envisage. That's tough. I mean, we have plans of expectations of people, of ourselves, of programs, KPIs. And when they don't shape to what we envisage to be, it's very tough. So I have here beans.
Yeah, okay. What about those beans?
It's ordinary beans. My daughter at about 5 years old gave me an app lesson. We came back to Singapore for vacation, visiting my mother-in-law, and she was helping my mother-in-law to, to choose and sort out the beans and cook them, right? I mean, I was news deprived. At that time, there was no internet. I was busy reading Straits Times in my mother-in-law's house. And my daughter, at that time, 5 years old, came up to me with some beans in her hands and say, "Papa, Grandma says throw these beans away because they should not be cooked." I say, "Look, I want to read my newspaper. If Grandma says throw, then throw. I have no authority in this household, Don't upset my mother-in-law. And then she asked me a few times, and I was a bit irritated. I was wanted to read my newspaper, you know. And then I said, look, Grandma asked you to throw because there are twigs and sand in the bins, and just throw them. Then she said, Dad, you're not listening. I said, we already threw the stones, the gravel, and the sand. These are bins that are not bean shaped. They're not bean shaped. And Grandma says to throw them. Isn't it wasteful? And I just continued reading my newspaper. Said, yeah, it's wasteful, but you know, this is Grandma's house. And then she walked around the table for a few times and came back to me and asked me, Dad, if we planted these misshapen beans, these crooked beans, if we planted them and they grow and sprouted, will the other beans that are coming out be misshapen? You know, I had to stop reading my newspaper.
My
A teachable moment. So I asked her, I said, Amber, if Papa were in an unfortunate accident and had a leg amputated, and we have a new baby brother, baby sister, would the baby come out with 2 legs or 1 leg? And she said, of course, 2 legs. I said, thank you for teaching me a lesson. Yes, if you plant these beans, the offspring will be beans. But because they are misshapen, we just want to throw them away. And I learned this precious lesson from my daughter, that we will encounter events, people, my own behavior that are not so perfect. Miss the KPI. And our gut reaction is to throw them away. But I think Yunnan taught me, working among the very needy, that maybe we need to nurture, we need to grow, especially those that do not meet our expectations. And I came back to Singapore with a passion for that. That we are so, you know, either bell curve or expectation or potential, but we really have to invest some of our time and energy to nurture the misshapen or events that don't turn out. COVID, for example.
And it may not even the misshapen, right? Lai Yong, it could be people who are just different from us.
Yeah, celebrating diversity.
Yes, and what I'm saying is it need not even be misshapen. It's just that we are not comfortable with people who have a different way of looking at life, a different attitude to life, and it's not even that they're misshapen, you know.
I'm with the College of Alice and Peter Tan now in NUS. I'm privileged to teach this module called Hidden Communities of Singapore.
Yeah.
And at the start of every class, I say we are here to understand the hidden communities, the marginalized, ask why they are hidden, ask what happened despite Singapore's progress, why they remain hidden. And at the end of every semester, now it's the end of semester, most of us going away with this inkling that the hiddenness is perhaps in me.
Yeah.
Not just them.
Could you give an example of one of these hidden communities so that our viewers can understand better what you're saying?
I don't dictate it. I allow the class to describe it. It's also in Yunnan. In Yunnan, I was training village health workers. These are villagers with very low education, primary 6, but they are the village health workers. They treat, they vaccinate, they stitch the wounds.
So are they like medics?
They're like medics, and they do everything that is needed to be done in the village. Now, if they were successful, they would have left the village and gone on to study in university. The fact that they were there means they were misshapen. If I put them in a classroom and taught them the way I would lecture, they would just decide that, look, the reason why I'm here is because I failed. I failed the exam, that's why I'm here. I'm left behind the village. So we have to discover rather than dictate. Help them discover from their own experience, from the problems they met, how to discover cures and prevention. So when I come back to NUS, I wanted to help our students discover, not tell them. So in our class, we discover. We go to hawker centers, we walk around around the homeless at night, we go to meet ex-offenders, we go to workers' dormitory, and let them discover who are the marginalized. Once they discover, they read about it.
And you don't tell them what to look for.
we do some guidance, right? We say, okay, look at people, objects, services, media, messages. I say, when you see a public notice say, don't loiter here, why do someone have to put up the statement? Go to the background. I mean, I show them a public health to say TB medicine is free in a language which the local people don't read when I was working among the minorities. What was that signboard for? The signboard was perhaps to warn the literate doctors, don't be corrupt, because we are telling people TB medicine is free. So signboard does all sorts of things. So they go out and look. And so we ask the question, for despite all the things we are doing, why do they remain hidden? And a lot of us is because of our mindset.
Yeah.
We keep silos and we remain hidden from them and they remain hidden from us.
Is this something that you discovered, especially in the 15 years in Yunnan? You know, there comes a point of realization, right?
So I always wanted to work in India or Pakistan because I feel Chinese, right? I never passed Chinese from Sikap Secondary School. You know, most of my friends many of us students were from the kampongs around Siglap. So I had to learn again a new culture, a new language. And that probably, if I may say, if people think that I'm successful in my years in Yunnan, I think the success was because I went there as a listener. I was forced to listen. I didn't come as this Singaporean NUS MBBS
to teach.
So I listened and learned together with my students. I mean, what did I know about malaria, about typhoid, about leprosy? I didn't know much. And we learned together, solve problems together. And you know, interestingly, I remember I taught them to stitch wounds. So I bought some meat. I used took them to stitch wounds, the village doctors, in sterile techniques using iodine and alcohol, and to swab, to clean, and then they stitch the wound because they got to stitch wounds in the village. And then one day, one very shy village doctor came to me and said that it's a waste of money. Meat is very expensive. We are very poor. I said, yeah, but science, knowledge is important, right? This idea that you pay money to learn. And I said, you can't use a cloth. You need to use real skin. It's different, right? And they said, yeah, we understand, but can we don't use iodine and alcohol? I said, but I need to teach you sterile technique. He said, yeah, we're learning the technique. Can we use vinegar and soy sauce?
So you don't waste it.
Say after that we can cook it. I said, that's it. I'm learning together. So recently because of COVID and our students, wonderful students at college, and they wanted to care for the migrant workers. And I got them to read, to study. I say, you're a university student. You don't just go out and do things, right? Read about it, understand the scenario, dig into the data. And I said, let's go beyond giving masks and Milo. And these are all very well, and so we came out with the idea, the whole premise of if you educate a girl, you educate a village. We approached a small cluster of Bangladeshi workers and asked, how many of you have a sister, a daughter, or a wife in university back in Bangladesh? Very few. We found about 15 to 20. And then raise some funds to give these women whose relative is working in Singapore, who is already studying in Dhaka, in the university over there, give a small bursary. And why university? Because then our undergrads can reach out on WhatsApp. This is the beauty of technology, to reach out this one student and make friends, build relationship. And in a way, we learned that, wow, we are privileged to be in NUS. And they, on this small sum of money that we go there, will support them a little bit more through.
And from what I've observed of you and your style of imbibing ideas and values, it's about relationships. It's always been about emphasizing relationships, about connectedness, right? Looking at what people's needs are instead of imposing what we think their needs are. And how would you distinguish the difference between that and social work the way we know it?
I'm very encouraged by the social workers I meet in the community. They exercise firm love, tough love, that go beyond the handout. They want the person, the client that they're helping to stand up, to move on. And that is class for me, the pressure on them as on us is this idea of what if the person we are helping, he's supposed to move on in 6 months, he doesn't move on in 6 months, he takes 9 months, 10 months, 11 months. And then the evaluation comes out as, wow, something is wrong. But something is growing. The beans are growing.
Yeah.
Not something is wrong. So I come back to this idea that how do we now as Singapore nurture our youth, our colleagues, 1 in 10 or 2 in 10 will have a mental health challenge in our working careers. How then do we affirm and nurture a mother whose kid is ill and say, oh no, this year, hang on, be in there, we know you're trying your best. You are not here as a production unit. You are here growing. Yeah. So how do we grow our SMEs? How do we grow our schools? How do we grow our neighborhood schools? Not grade driven, but we keep an eye on them, but not all.
Yeah. No, I like what you're saying, right? I really like, because the point you're making is, let's allow for different individuals and groups of individuals to grow at a certain pace and recognize that they are growing, but there's always the risk of putting very strict timelines.
Yes.
Right? Timelines. I mean, the word timeline is what's coming to our mind, because from the get-go, we're all on an escalator, so to speak, and there are timelines. And if you don't meet those timelines, or if you don't perform at those timelines the way you expected to, you're considered second class, you're considered not as good, and so on. Is that what you're alluding to?
Not just allow, invest.
Okay.
So I would just encourage parents to invest in their children such that they have the ability to grow at a different pace. It's scary, but it's worth it.
But let me play devil's advocate, right? If you look at things like the economy, right? If you need the economy to not just chug along, but do well.
Yes.
Because if the economy doesn't do well, you don't get jobs created, and so on and so forth, right? And livelihood is at stake.
Yes.
So yes, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense at one level, but at a macro level, at a national level, I do feel that timelines, targets, and so on are necessary. Students need to go through.
I agree with you. I warn those who have not to go out screaming to say that we want a lower GDP, because lower GDP means unemployment for many people. Now we're experiencing it. But I need parents precisely to know that the upward swinging GDP is maybe not sustainable. We need to nurture our children to be able to thrive through thick and thin. And I think back to contentment is important, gratitude important, prudence is important. I mean, do we really need to upgrade from a 4-room flat to a big condo when I'm 35 years old, just when I know that the recession can be around the corner? Is there better ways to plan our own personal finances? So the country at the macro level needs to chuck on at that, and it's good for us. I hold the government highly responsible in the era where climate change is going to destroy many jobs. Climate change is a big issue. And then how then do we as citizens, manage our mindset such that we grow in diversity and we grow in resilience, even financial resilience?
So, but you say we need to teach or coach our children and give them certain opportunities. Are you talking about spending time with our children?
Yes. So, for example, I'm not saying every parent should do this. I chose not to buy a car in Singapore when I came back. I can afford it. But at my salary, I can afford it. But I knew that if I buy a car and I fetch my kids to school and I have a car culture, and when they start working, earning $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, which is a lot for a young person, one of the first things they want to do is to buy a car, and they cannot afford it. So for years, I walked my children to the bus stop. I will walk you to the bus stop.
So let me ask you, do your children feel shortchanged? For example, when you went to Yunnan, right?
Yes.
One of the questions I had in my mind is, were you being irresponsible? did you really check with your wife and your children? Is this the life that you want? You decided, they came along, but is that fair?
So I asked my children.
Hmm.
My daughter was born in Vancouver, and she has since given up her Canadian citizenship because she loves Singapore. I'm proud of her. And once in Vancouver, I sat on North Shore, beautiful land, Falls Creek, Kitsilano, beautiful. I love Vancouver. And then I asked her, I said, hey, do you regret that you could have lived here? I could have lived in one of these houses. And she said, that Vancouver is very nice, but every street smells the same. Says in Yunnan, you walk down every lane, it smells different. Says, Dad, do you really want me to grow up in a place where everything looks the same, smells the same? Say, bring me here every once in a while for a vacation, but let me grow up in a place where things smell and look different. And I'm thankful, I'm blessed. They both of them receive government scholarships to pursue tertiary education. My daughter told me one day that medicine doesn't really help the poor. She was maybe still very young. And I said, what do you mean? She says, no, children will fall sick again. What they really need is clean toilets and clean water. And Dad, if you don't mind, I'll be a construction engineer one day. And they live a dream. I don't think I shortchanged them in that I don't understand that I have to give children the best. I need to give them what is good and right. And at 21 years old, when I asked her, what do you want for your birthday? And she says, Dad, will you go camping with me for 14 days? And both of us went camping. And what a privilege. What a privilege to have a family that supports and grow together. I'm very thankful for that. And I say that because we are so fortunate to be in Singapore. Singapore, the society allows us to move in and out. In other countries, if I had moved out of a civil service, I would never be able to join back to the civil service, which I am now today.
So unfortunately, we have come to the end of the interview, but I'd like to ask you one final question. Whatever you're saying is highly inspirational. But, a lot of people who are pragmatic say all that you're saying, while it sounds great, it's not practical if you want to look at running a country. Modernization, and affluence actually does exacerbate income disparity, social stratification. Those are realities. Yes. I mean, that's the argument. Those are realities. So let's learn to accept those things instead of trying to change it. What's your response?
I would say education and prosperity gives us the resources to be proactive. Use them. From minute things to macro things. In macro things, I encourage our young people to take good looks about climate change. What are we going to do when seawater rise 2 meters? And we are fortunate enough in Singapore that we have the resources and the need to push ahead and make changes. And read the climate change plan. I mean, this is a wonderful plan that is being put out. How many governments in the world put up a climate change plan? Right? So read it and be proactive about it. This is macro. This is not altruism, because if you don't tackle that, you will be impoverished.
You're just be kicking the can down the road.
So macro. Yeah. Micro, if I may just come back to NUS, okay, and this will cause a lot of people to be irritated. No free car parks. For example, staff pay $80 and students pay $35. Why should it be per month for a car park? The students who drive, especially the father's car, should pay $85. Right now, the proactive is not just in paying. If I were a student leader, I would go up to NUS president and say that students should pay full, but let us take the extra $55 as a welfare fund to subsidize students who need to pay MRT and bus rides. Because in a few years' time, the Auditor General will come and take away this nonsense. Why is these students paying $35? You have no right, no grounds to pay $35. So we need to use our resources, look at the micro and the macro, and then to decide that for the better, for the better of ourselves and for our fellow men, we choose to do what is right. Not just what is pragmatic, but what is right.
What is the single most important thing you think that you have given your children?
My children, they have enjoyed a happy childhood.
Thank you. Tan Lai Yong, I'm just so proud to say that you're my friend. Thank you very much, my friend.